Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Go ahead and take the roll, please.
Trustee Sperling. Here. Trustee Lee.
Here.
Trustee Hines. Yay. Trustee Youngerman.
Yeah.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Benn.
Here.
And we're all here this evening. Moving on to public participation this evening. First off, we have the public comment portion. If there's any member of the public that's here wishing to address the board, but we have you next, so not you. Anybody? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on to the, item B this evening, which is Chico Montenegro of the Sam's Club Hiring Center. You can come on down.
Good evening, everybody. Wasn't too sure if I was speaking today, so I didn't really prepare anything, but I would just like to say hello to everybody. And Montgomery has been so far very good to me this week. I've been going around in the community trying to meet a bunch of different folks. Had a meeting with these two gentlemen right here, and I appreciate that. Jared Chipman as well as a few other folks that I've met in the community. Sam's Club is very excited to be a part of the Montgomery community. There's a lot to do, but we have started, and amongst that, we will be hiring a lot of people, and we're getting tons of applications. So I just wanted to make it known that we are here and we are available to be reached out to. We're actually at 1240 Douglas Road in Oswego, not Montgomery, I know, but close enough. And we're excited for anybody. We're taking all types of applications. We're looking to hire between 140 and 170 people, so there's a lot of jobs that we'll be bringing to the community. As more times passes, I'd hope to meet everyone that's in this room eventually, and we'll make the point to do so. So thank you guys all for the time.
Thank you.
Is there a phone number that people could call, or would you prefer they stop at the location?
There is. I can have a couple business cards. It's at 630-554-5142. That is the hiring center and membership. So if you guys don't have memberships, I'll also be setting that up for you too. So everybody around here. Any other questions?
554-5142?
Correct.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, moving on to the consent agenda this evening. I'll read all three of these and we'll entertain a motion to approve. Minutes of the village board meeting of February 10th. Accounts payable through February 18th, $504,845 and change. And then accounts receivable report for January of 2014. With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Second?
Moved in second. Take the roll, please.
Trustee Hines.
Yes.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Benn.
Yes.
Trustee Sperling. Yes. Trustee Lee.
Yes. That carries 6-0. Moving on tonight, items for separate action. The first item, which is the approval of the police contract. And with that, I'll turn it over to Administrator Zoffel.
Thank you, President Brawley. We've come to the end of the road here. We did receive notice that the police have ratified the contract, and so we put it before you tonight. I would just like to thank all of you for the feedback and all the guidance you gave. I'd like to thank the members of the team, Lisa Calloway, our attorney, and the chief, the deputy chief, our HR manager, Megan Ostrico, Justin for his help, and I'd like to thank the officers that served on the team. I think the process went well. I think we've come up with something that the officers feel good about, and that we are still, living within our means. So I think it was good for everyone. With that, we'd answer any questions you have.
Are there any questions from the board on this? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Youngerman, second by Marisak.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Benn.
Yes.
Trustee Sperling. Yes. Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Trustee Hines.
That carries 6-0. Move on to item B, which is the bond issuance ordinance. You were Justin.
I can discuss it if you like.
And I'll have Jeff give a summary on this.
This would allow us to restructure some of our debt on this building, which would bring the debt payments more in line with the level of our utility tax payments. So it'd kind of take some of the payments early and lower them and raise some later on, but it still stays within the framework of the 2024 timeline for paying them off. So it's not extending beyond the original deadline, just restructuring. So with that, we'd answer any questions you have.
This is what we discussed in our budgetary meetings, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
It kind of balances the payments out
Yes.
instead of
Yeah.
being so
They'll be more leveled year to year instead of being high and then dropping off.
Is there any other questions of staff on this? Do I hear a motion for approval?
Second?
Move in second, take the roll, please.
Trustee Heinz. Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling. Trustee Lee.
Yes.
And that carries 6-0. Items for discussion this evening, FY15 Capital Improvement Fund Budget and CIP. And with that, I'll turn it over to Justin for his presentation.
Thank you, President Brawley. In front of you tonight, and you have the cover page, and then right behind that, there is a listing of the proposed projects. There are several different funds that we're going to be talking about tonight. So without further ado, the first one is motor fuel tax. There are 4 main projects that we're looking at included next year. The first is Webster Street crossing repair. It's approximately $120,000 project, and we are applying for a $100,000 grant. If we do not receive that grant, we would come back to the board at that time. The Burlington Northern Santa Fe Quiet Zone study is currently included at $20,000. And then the annual MFT and annual salt purchase are included for $340 and $140 each. The forfeiture and seizure fund and then the E911 fund, we are looking at utilizing some of the funds in each of those to purchase needed equipment. The first item is field-based reporting, which would allow the officers to do the reporting in the field versus needing to be back at the station. And then the second item is New World servers. These would be computer servers for the software that the police department uses on a daily basis. Any questions on either one of those, any of those items? Okay. Within the capital improvement fund, the board did just approve restructuring of the debt service. 3 items that are included besides that in the budget. The first is police department video surveillance. This is the first of several technology-related items that we'll be looking at over the next couple of years to implement. The second is pavement management 5-year program, and 2014 will be the last year of the current 5-year program, so this will cover 2015 through 2019. Then the third item is the weather warning siren. The board has talked about it several different times, and that is included in the budget. There has been some discussion whether or not this item can be taken earlier than April 30th. We can certainly start working on that before April 30th if needed. Water Improvement Fund, there are 3 major projects in there. The first one is Phase 2 of the Boulder Hill Water Main Project, which is approximately $4.7 million. And we have budgeted for a loan from the Illinois EPA to cover most of those costs. Chlorine system improvements of $230,000. And then we are looking to begin engineering on the Jefferson Street lift station rehabilitation. We are planning to apply for an Illinois EPA low-interest loan for that as well. And we will talk about, at the next board meeting, we will talk about the water fund itself and how to pay for some of these projects. The last item we're going to discuss tonight, or the last fund we're going to discuss, is the Vehicle Reserve Fund. There have been schedules created for each department for vehicle replacement. The general and water funds will be contributing an average amount over the next 10 years, so that our vehicle reserve fund will be fully funded by 2024. For the current year, we have budgeted for the replacement of 5 vehicles. The first is the replacement of a Trailblazer in the police department. Second is the replacement of a Crown Vic in the police department. Third is the replacement of a fleet services pickup in Public Works. Replacement of a single axle dump truck in Public Works. And then replacement of a skid steer in Public Works. The last item listed on that page is the second year of the lease of the police vehicles. Last year was the first year of the lease. So we'll have this year, and then the fiscal year 16 budget will have the last payment for that. Are there, I know I went really quick here, but are there any questions on any of the items that I?
The police department video surveillance, we talked about looking to see if we could use some of those 911 funds for that. Was that something that's not possible?
We have not, I have not had a chance to talk to Chief Myers about that yet. We can certainly follow up on that.
I had a question also, Justin. The replacement of the Crown Vic, if my understanding is correct, those are no longer available. And I wondered if we might need to adjust that number based on the need to buy some other type of vehicle.
This number takes what the current replacement cost is and adds 2.5% to the value of the current replacement cost. So we think this number should be pretty good. It may be a little bit off because of a new type of vehicle, but we think it's still fairly accurate.
I'm real happy to see us planning this fund and getting ourselves on solid footing with it.
I appreciate the private meetings we had, because it kind of looks like we don't have any more questions. So it's not one of those where it's a rubber stamp and saying, good job, Justin. That those things, I was in there over an hour or two, and you answered a lot of our questions, I think, during a private meeting, so we don't, tonight it's kind of like a rubber stamp. At least we aren't.
I have a quick question, and forgive me, I wasn't at the last meeting. But as far as under MFT funding, the BNSF Quiet Zone study, as I understand that Quiet Zone study, it takes place after the improvements are already completed, as far as the realigning of the exit entry ramps, the 3130 interchange work that's going on. The Quiet Zone study can't really start until after that's completed, correct? The Webster Road crossing?
That is
defer to Engineer Wallers. His staff is more familiar with that process.
That's the commonly how it's done is when you're evaluating an existing crossing. We've not tried to do a proposed crossing before, so normally we would wait until the crossing improvements are in place. Yeah.
With the schedule that the existing that they're currently on, when's 3031 interchange scheduled to be done? September, maybe?
Tentatively, it was August of this year. They are several months behind on the 3031 project, so it would seem that they have not re-advertised a new completion date yet. I think they're waiting to see how well they do this spring, but
so there's potential.
Possible it could be September, October.
And once
later.
you get into September, October, October, November, any seed and blanket and that sort of thing, if they have to wait until the spring of 15 to get substantial completion, can that Quiet Zone study start prior to them receiving substantial completion?
I would think once the physical improvements are in.
Yeah, if it's just landscaping, we could
Okay.
proceed. It's the curbs, the gutters, and the physical crossing that they're going to be looking at.
Okay, and
I think your concerns are warranted. There's a chance.
Thinking, yeah,
there's a chance this is a fiscal year 16 project.
If this keeps pushing And with the April that we had last year, I mean, we could have that this year, and we could easily be pushed into 2015. So I think it's important. I think that quiet zone study is important. But then again, I'm trying to find money in the budget. And if this is an item that's going to be pushed to 2015 potentially, it could potentially free up $20,000. So
I think if you were to leave it in the budget, we would know by late summer. We'd certainly have a much better idea of what the realities of those projects were and how they tied in with the proposed quiet zone study, and the board could reconsider it at that time if those funds were not going to be used this fiscal year.
thank you.
I do support the idea of the quiet zone study. I think there's nothing pressing us to try and budget it and do it this year. The realignment of the, Watkins thing is going to be kind of a shock, I think. Not a shock, but something to get used to anyway. So maybe this is something that we push to FY16 and let the road open and then hit it after that, instead of dragging our feet on it for this year. What are your thoughts down there? Or we could always leave it in there and discuss it before.
The previous conversation I think we had was that we were going to check and see if we could do it before the road was actually in, so we could potentially save some money and not, maybe we could configure to the quiet zone study, but it doesn't sound like, based on what Engineer Weller said, that that's a possibility, so that would change the time frame maybe to push it back to 16.
I guess the other option would be is to leave it in the budget for this year. We haven't, approved anything yet. It'll be funded in the budget if we want to move forward in June, July, or August, let's say. But there's nothing super pressing on it, so opinions down there? Leave it, pull it?
I'm either way. I just wanted to make it known. I mean, I see that as a potential problem at some point, so.
So we'll leave it in as a definite maybe for this year.
All right.
That's it.
Okay.
President Brawley, if I could, Finance Director Van Voren and I were just talking. I mean, that money stays in your MFT fund. So if we reach a point this summer where it doesn't appear that we're going to move forward on the quiet zone, one option would be to roll that money into your road program, which can certainly use it, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So there's options out there.
So we'll leave it in for now, and we'll revisit that later. A few comments I wanted to make. One would be the weather warning siren. We talked about it. I think I've talked to a few of the board members about the fact that it's coming out of the capital improvement fund that we actually have funds in for this year that we can do that. So if the board's comfortable, we'll budget for it, and I guess we wouldn't even budget for it next year.
It'll end up coming out of the budget, because we'll go ahead and do it this year if the board.
I'd like to see us move forward with that as fast as we can.
The fiscal year that we're in right now.
Yeah.
Right.
And just that will be removed then from next year's.
Right. It would just
Okay.
be an expense in this year's budget. And I've asked Engineer Wallers to start that process to move forward with getting
I
it.
know I had asked a question as to if it wasn't, that if we could have the background or the legwork done prior to starting that fiscal year, get it done quicker, but no, that's great. I think the residents will really be happy with that. So thank you.
I did have one comment on that. Are there a lot of different manufacturers for this kind of thing, or is there generally the one that we've used in the past?
There are several manufacturers, but I think we want to stay with it's American Signal Manufacturing. The T135, I think, is the model because of compatibility issues. But there are different installers, so we would probably try to get pricing from a couple of different installers. But I know that there's already a relationship with one vendor, so I have to speak to the chief a little bit on implementation of it. So we may look at some other manufacturers, but again, I think we want to have some compatibility for the future.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Two other comments that I had. in the Water Improvement Fund, the budget, the loan from the IEPA, are we sure we're going to get that? Are we going to get the loan from them this year?
Yes.
That'll get funded.
And just to go back in time, it's a fairly long process. It takes about 12 months, but you start with a project plan that is submitted to the EPA that describes exactly what we're going to construct. They approve the project plan with preliminary cost estimates, and then we go through the rest of the process, which included the ordinance to authorize the $15 a month fee. There's environmental clearances, a lot of other hurdles that have to get through. But now the last remaining issue will be we bid the project, we get our bids in, we submit those to EPA, they approve our bids, and then that's the final item that's used to perfect the loan. So they use the amount of the bid as what the basis of the loan will be. So yes, we are, we're in line to get our money. There's no reason why we won't get our money.
Okay. And the last comment that I was going to make was regarding the budget meetings that Denny mentioned, just for the benefit of the public that's here today. What staff has done in the past, prior to my time on the board, and then we kind of kept that tradition, was sit down individually or in a group of two to kind of go over every different fund in pretty tremendous detail so we can ask questions, this and that. At no point was there more than two, board members. Just wanted to make that clear. There was no Open Meeting Act violation with that, so. Any other comments on either one of these 5 funds this evening? Awesome. I was going to say we'll move on, but moving on is adjournment. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Hold on. Do we have new or unfinished business?
We don't have it on here, but you can certainly talk.
The question that the item I was speaking to Mike about prior to, I was on Patterson Road yesterday picking something up, and I noticed that they don't have their final lift of asphalt, and I'd asked the homeowner about it, and apparently it's not turned over, or I'm not sure if it's turned over to the village yet. And based upon Engineer Waller's presentation a couple weeks ago, I actually do listen to what you say. The pavement condition index, we're going through that, really I call it a scratch coat or binder coat now, and as we get down lower, it's going to cost more and more to repair. And is that burden going to be, if it's, the village hasn't accepted yet, is that burden going to lay with the homeowners there? Or is the village going to accept that burden? Who's the builder, and is there any way that we can go after them, or do we have money set aside to handle this type of thing?
Which subdivision?
I think it's
Huntington Chase.
Huntington Chase.
We're suing them now.
Perfect.
I think the one thing we should tell these people is the individuals are never going to pay for it themselves. I mean, people have asked me the same question they asked you, but you'd say, no, it's, it's either going to be the builder or us. It's not going to say, okay, you owe this much and you owe this much for the road in front of your house.
Well, I think they were afraid that maybe that if it hadn't been accepted by the village, that it was somehow going to be turned into an SSA or something. So, I mean, we didn't do that with the drainage improvements on Bryan Lane. I'm certainly not going to vote to do something like that with roadways. Next item, I know that there are quite a few residents who plan on attending the March 10th meeting. They want to discuss this shooting incident. I think that we should make sure that it's on the agenda for that meeting. That way we can begin to address it. And, I guess I'll have plenty of questions for Attorney Anderson at that meeting. So.
We will talk about that. Staff, you and me. We just had a public meeting, an hour-and-a-half public meeting on Wednesday night that was open to the public, advertised as such on Facebook and that. I don't know what new information we would have to present, so I wouldn't want staff to be burdened with putting a presentation together on an issue that we just presented. But
well, let's start with this then. if we're discussing options or looking at potential funding options for our capital improvements that include a non-home rule sales tax referendum as an option, and then we're looking at another option that's a home rule option, maybe this other option, this home rule option, would better serve us because it would solve the capital funding problem, and it would also allow the village board more authority to regulate renters. And I guess some of my questions are going to be, do we have to be home rule, or can we be non-home rule and institute some sort of rental accountability program where either the renters have to be accountable or the landlords have to be accountable. I know that 2 doors down from my house, 2 or 3 doors down, they just put a sign in for a rental company. And so these rental companies come into the village, and they're in business to make money, but are they doing background checks? How do we know that they're not renting to a sex offender? How do we know that they're not renting to someone who's been convicted of a felony? And if they're doing business in our community, don't they have a certain responsibility or accountability to that community if they should put people in those homes that cause problems? And so that's just a couple of maybe 20 questions I have.
Do you have an answer to the one, or do you want to, we'll talk about it on the 10th?
Well, the short one is, do you have the ability to have a landlord licensing program, that would mandate things like background checks and some of those procedures that you mentioned? The answer is, as a non-home rule community, you do not have that authority. As a home rule community, you certainly would. Aurora is a good example of that. They have a very robust system for that, but they are home rule. So at present, those are the only 2 choices. Maybe in the future there'd be a 3rd choice, but right now those are the only 2 choices.
But to clarify, I think that I know of the 2 of the problem properties that are over on the west side there. Neither of them are renters. Neither of them are landlord-tenant situations, right. So it doesn't apply.
That doesn't apply in those cases, but I'm talking about a bigger solution. You've got good renters, you've got bad renters, you've got good homeowners, you've got bad homeowners. But eventually, we're going to become a community of rental homes, and I think that it affects the community as a whole. Something's got to be done, and I can't remember what board member I was talking to, but in my eyes, this problem is just as important as our lack of capital funding, or capital improvements funding. What good does it do if you have good roads if you don't have good families that are taking care of, that are living in the community? They don't care about anything. This is a problem that we need to deal with, and quite honestly, if we don't deal with this problem, then we don't deserve to sit in these seats.
This was talked about like 10 years ago before the growth, and we talked about that, and at the same time, we couldn't do anything about it either until you become home rule. And that's why we know we're going to be about 30,000. Can't do anything until 25,000. But there is legislator in the House, I think, although I think Linda Holmes is helping out, and so is Chapa, on having home rule, but not on the taxation part, but on the rental part. Because of this problem, we're not just here by ourselves. Oswego, Yorkville, they all have the same problems. A lot of them are for rent homes. They're out of Vegas and California. They own a lot. You look in the paper, they have a lot of homes in those towns, and they're not buying the cheap homes. They're buying the nicer homes, and they're renting from out there. So, yeah, there's a lot more problems, but we're not alone in it. And I think this thing brought up by Linda Holmes and them are to help everybody to try to get to home rule, but not on the taxation part, but on helping the towns control the people. Correct?
Yes.
That is correct.
Okay.
And I hope to God that it passes, but it could take a year or two
Yeah.
before it really passes. And that doesn't solve the problem. If we do a home rule referendum, because that's one of the options that Attorney Anderson had presented, it really solves both of our problems.
It's very hard to pass a home rule. It's a lot easier to pass this.
Oh, I absolutely agree.
It's just
But since I'm very proud of the way that this board has handled all the issues that we've dealt with this year, because we've handled and had some pretty serious discussions about things, and we've done it respectfully, and we've listened to each other, and we haven't shied away from difficult issues, and I don't think that we should shy away from this one.
I would also like to comment, if we got to a point where we could implement some type of landlord licensing program or registration program, that's still going to take a good chunk of time. We're going to have additional staff. It's not going to be something we can implement and say a month from now, any place that is a rental, we've got it covered. Because there's so many owners out there that have layers and layers of protection, asset protection, to hide their ownership. And they can have a designated agent, whether it's an individual or a company. So I agree with you. I would like to see some kind of program or regulation in place, but I just want to put it out there that that's still going to take time, even just implementing it.
Sure.
It's not something that will happen quickly.
A few comments that I want to make on that. I don't know that we'll turn into, and I understand the fear that rentals coming into town. I don't think, and I don't think anybody here would assume that because there's rentals here now, or maybe the population of rentals has gone up, that we'll become a community of rentals. I don't feel like that's going to happen. I don't fear that. I also don't fear rentals. I think we have plenty of rentals in town who are excellent residents of this community. So the issue may not be rental units. It might be something completely different. If there's an issue with residents or people who live in our community breaking laws, that's completely different from rentals. Just because you're a renter doesn't mean that you're going to break laws. Going out for referendum for home rule is not something that I would support. I think we know how this board would act with those authorities and those, but the message isn't as clear when you go out for a referendum for a sales tax, non-home rule sales tax. You're saying we need X because of this. You go out for a home rule, you're going to say, well, yeah, we need money for our roads. We also need to regulate rentals. And then, oh, by the way, any future board could raise your property tax, your sales tax, do a gas tax, any kind of fees, any kind of regulations in the future that this board wouldn't have any control over once we're gone. I think as a resident, that'd be a harder thing to swallow than saying we need to do a sales tax referendum. It kind of muddies the water a little bit with that. So, but yes.
And just for the record, I'm not against renters. I'm against people who aren't accountable, whether they be homeowners, whether they be renters, whoever. It's an accountability issue.
And there is 3 cities that are under 30, North Aurora, Yorkville, and us, that are all in the same boat. And that U4 Rent Homes owns places, and in Plano too, so they're in all of them. We just got to have a Mondo carry a bigger stick.
Well, and then we can empower, hopefully at some point we can begin to empower code enforcement and the police department to be able to do more in order to carry a bigger stick.
Well, I know that Lakewood Creek West, which is where one of his problem houses is, they have a no rental right in their HOA. You can't rent your property. It's part of their homeowners association. So I would defer to Attorney Anderson, but maybe that's something we can.
We can't enforce their rules, but they can.
Correct. So that's another option where they could limit some renters or
And as
put
I
processes in
understand it,
place.
They're pursuing that right now, so.
Okay. Anybody have anything else this evening? Okay. That'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved and second. Take the roll, please.
Trustee Hines? Trustee Youngerman?
Yes.
Trustee Marisak?
Yes.
Trustee Bond?
Yes.
Trustee Spurling? Yes. Trustee Lee?
And we're adjourned. Thank you.